What's up, guys? So this is gonna be my first brew session in the not so finished brew shed, which I am still working on the brand new Clawhammer Supply system that I bought. I don't know how this brew is gonna go because when I was trying to dial in temps, I didn't know if I'm actually at the right temperature. I did some comparisons between different thermometers and everything, and the Clawhammer's probe actually did agree with my thermometers and everything, but the problem I was having when I was doing test boils on the system, and it's not the Clawhammer's fault, it's like I'm trying to figure out my boil temp in my area because I use the scientific calculators and it says I should be at 211.9, and I'm actually boiling at like 208, so I know there's an off there. So what I did was, and I hope my mash temps are right and everything for this brew, but what I did was I went ahead and just got this thing to peak rolling boil, and it was reading like 207, 208. So what I did is I just went ahead and put the difference of temperature in the Clawhammer's offset settings, the SC settings, and I'm just gonna go with it. So we're gonna go at 152 degree mash today, and we'll just see where it goes. We're gonna use the Clawhammer controller, dialed in at, I think Beersmith said with a 70 degree temp grain. We're gonna dial it up to about 157, and then as we mash in the grain, that temp will drop, and then hopefully we get our mash temp. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's add the water, and then get this thing dialed in to 157 degrees. All right, got my Beersmith calcs right here. We're gonna add, remember this is a brew in a bag system, so we're gonna be doing full like volume water in the kettle. We're not doing any sparging on this. This is a complete no sparge setup. So here we go. We're gonna use total water of 7.59 gallons. And if you look down here, they do it in quarts, 30.34 quarts. I always take my quarts, divide them by 4 to get my gallons. I like dealing with gallons. It's easier for me to understand in quarts. I never measure anything in quarts. Everything's always been measured in gallons for me. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get our water added to here. So I need to essentially add 7.59 gallons, so 7.5 gallons to the kettle. So let's get that in there. And I already treated the water with some gypsum. I put about a teaspoon of gypsum in the water. And this is store-bought water this time. I just bought it because I needed the jugs and it came with water. I usually use my tap because I'm pretty happy with that. We're gonna see how this brew goes. I also grain the mill very fine as opposed to how I grain it on the grain father. I've read online a lot of people recommend milling the grain finer for a brew in a bag. So that's what I did. So let's get the water in this thing, man. Let's get this thing fired up. Go ahead and put our basket in. All right, now what I want to do is I'm going to turn the kettle back around. I just turned it so you guys can see the graduated numbers on the side of the kettle. I'm just turning it around. And I just got an old sheet of drywall sitting under this to protect the table from the heat, which has worked pretty well during my tests. So let's go ahead and fire this up. They told me when I initially ordered the system, they said to, of course, open up the bottom drain and come over and hit the pump to purge the air out of the lines, which actually went really quick. Right? And after I purge the air out, take the lid, put it on top, connect, hit the pump button again, and we'll have a recirculating mash, if you will, the sprayer. Actually does a nice little rain on here. So we're going to let this go ahead and fire up the temp here. Beersmith, of course. We're going to go ahead and go to 157.1. So I'm going to go over to my heater here. Turn the heat, well, first of all, before I do that, I'm going to go down and set this to 157, and I should come back around and see 0.1 just for the hell of it. Why not? Set. Hit the heat button, and when we get the mash temp, we will come in and mash in our grains. We've actually overshot our temp to 159.2. I dialed it at 157.1. Not sure what's going on there. I did run auto tune on this before. It has stopped heating. I have it on recirc. Hopefully we can get this temp down. What I'm actually going to do right now is this is just my mash in temp. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set this down to our mash temp, since we've already hit our mash in temp technically. And my grain is actually a little warmer than I thought it was. So even the mash in temp should have been lower than that. But we will see. I'm going to go ahead and change the temperature on this. We're going to set it at 152.1. So let's go ahead and set it at 152.1. Since I can be so precise. And set it. I'm going to kill the pump. And we're going to go ahead and disconnect the hose, and we're going to mash in the grain. Alright, so, my goodness, my camera was not rolling when I dove in, but you can see I just mashed in right now. I'll show you guys the grist here. And I was talking about, I love being able to use my big paddle again, but yeah, I mashed in the grain here. I'm using my old school Brew-Q paddle that I bought from a guy on Etsy called Abbey Cat Brewing. But yeah, I've just mashed in pretty good grist there to water. And we're just going to put it on recirc. And I mentioned that our temp had dropped down. Now it's up to 154. It's kind of all over the place, really. I'm hoping I can get this thing dialed in more. It's kind of the trials and tribulations of using a new system, is getting it dialed in. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to put it on recirc. And my mash is like way overshot right now. So go ahead and hit the pump. Turn the flow back on to the pump. And we got a little sprinkler rain effect going on there. Just kind of let it rain over. Do like the guys in Clawhammer videos do. But yeah, I'm hoping that the mash temp stabilizes, because it's really high right now. It's way off. Not sure why. I spent probably a few hours trying to dial this thing in. But it's not heating, at least, and I'll show you guys right quick. I have this thing at a set value of 152.1. I'm at 155.9. What I'm thinking I should have done is I'm gonna probably have to run the auto tune on this again, just to make sure. But right now my heat is on, but it's not running because I'm way over temp. But the pump's on, and I'm hoping the recirc gets this thing down pretty quick. I'm gonna go ahead and start my 60-minute timer anyhow, just because. So we got a 60-minute timer going. Well, we're down to 154. I mean, the idea is with these, when you're brewing, usually the higher the number on your mash, the more body you get in a beer and maltier profile. The lower you get a lighter body, or medium to light body. So this is actually going to be more of a medium bodied beer, and we're sitting at about 152.1 on the dial in, and this is actually dropping, which makes me happy. So hopefully in the next couple minutes this thing really drops down about 152 again, and we'll be rocking and rolling. So, you know that phrase, don't count your chickens before they hatch? It actually had overshot up to 154.3 or whatever, and it's slowly climbing back down. So it's like it's ramping up too much power to catch up at a certain point. But it looks like I'm probably going to have like an average mash temp around 153 today. So I either have to dial this in some more, or I'm gonna have to just like set my mash temp even lower, knowing that it's probably gonna hover at the middle number. So a deviation of plus or minus, or actually plus two degrees minus 1 or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out though. So let's. I think we're halfway through the mash. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kill the pump and heat for a hot minute. No pun intended, and just kind of stir this sucker up. Get back to you here shortly. Alright, mash is up. So, I'll let it run for just a couple more minutes here. So, I don't know what I'm gonna do, man. I have to figure out how to dial this in. This thing actually, after I did the grist, I don't know if maybe there's some trapped heat in the grist itself. When I started stirring around, my temp actually skyrocketed like 158. Never seen that before, but I've also never stirred the grist before. But it does have a tendency, just when it's running, it gets away from me. It runs up to about 155, 156. So, not sure what I'm gonna do about that, or the best way to figure out how to keep it from doing that. But it does get away from me. It will get down to about 151.5, and then it'll start to kind of give dose of heat. But once it hits the 152.1 that I have it set at, it continues to just throw heat at it, and it will keep throwing heat at it until about the 154 mark. So I'm not sure, but we're gonna go ahead and kill the pump and kill the heat and let this basket drain. So let's get the basket lifted up. This should be fine. Okay, a couple of things. I did not capture, my camera's doing weird stuff today. I did not capture actually lifting this up and putting the J-clips in, but I was able to do it by myself. What I did is I used both arms, let it drain a lot of the liquid out, so you have to kind of hold it in place for a second. Let that weight kind of go away with the works. And then I inserted one J-clip in first, and I was able to let it rest and continue to drain. And then I was actually able to just use that one J-clip to rest while I put the other ones in. So yeah, we're letting it drain out, and it's actually looks like it's pretty drained already. But I'm just kind of letting this drip and drain out a little more, and then after that we will get to boil. And it doesn't take very long to get this thing to boil, trust me. I've played with it with just plain water quite a bit. So a couple of things I will note. The system overshot big time on my my mash out at 167. It actually got up to like 171, and then it would drop down to about 166.1, and then it would start heating up again, and then it'd be like, you'd be watching it and you'd be, all right, you're at 167, and it would just keep dosing the heat. Not much heat, just a little bit of heat. And then it would just fire past about 4 degrees. So there's definitely some dialing in I'm gonna have to do on this. I got to figure it out, and I got to figure it out kind of quick because I got 2 more beers to do, and this is my new brew system, so I have to get in tune with it. But right now, there's a couple of things about it that I realize I'm going to have to work on. But overall, it's pretty cool. I really like the size of the kettle, and the controller's pretty easy to use once you understand how to use it. But I think I'm going to have to go in there and mess with PID settings and other things just to try to get it to meet my needs. Because even on my mash, it was overshooting off and on here and there. And then on the mash out, it was overshooting quite a bit. My refractometer reading on this came out to be 14, or my bricks reading on my refractometer came out to like 12 bricks, which is like a 1047 specific gravity. So, and I think this recipe says it's going to be a 1063. But I'm also going to be adding corn sugar to this, which is going to bump up the ABV, or the specific gravity as well. This is pre-boil gravity reading. I'm going to lose about 1.4 gallons in boil off. I've already done the math doing a boil off test on this. At 60% power, we're not going to boil at 100% because there's 2 gallons at 100%, but the boils are just way too rigorous for 5 gallons. So I dial it down to about 60%, and that seems to work just fine on water anyways. We'll see how it does with wort. Anything else? No, this is my first brew on it. I think the beer will come out okay, but I'm definitely gonna have to play with the controller and get the mash dialed in, because right now it's just like kind of all over the place. User error? Probably so. Clawhammer, if they're watching, maybe you guys can comment on thoughts on that, or maybe we can talk about this off sometime, or emails, whatever. But anyways, let's get this going, man. It doesn't sound like there's much dripping out of that basket anymore. Little drippage, but not much going on there. Alright, so now, while the basket's draining off the camera here, alright, we're going to go ahead and dial this up to like 213 degrees, just as it overshoots my boil atmospheric based temperature of 211.9. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and set the head to 213. Set it. Set it. There we go. 213. I'm actually going to come in here. Once we get to the boil, I'm actually going to come in here and dial it down to like here. Dial it down to 60% and leave it in manual mode at that point. But right now, I want to leave it in full-on mode just to get this thing boiling faster. It looks like I have a pre-boil volume of 6.5 gallons. I said 1.4 boil off, so that means I'm probably going to end up with like 5.1 fermenter volume, probably. I might top it up with a little bit of water. We'll see. Alright guys, we got 10 minutes left here to boil. We're going to go ahead and add in our Cascade hops for aroma and flavor, of course. And we're going to set our timer for 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to put this bad boy to chill. Seems to be boiling along just fine. Everything on the boil front's been working out, and it looks like I'm actually going to have about 5.5, maybe over 5.5 on final fermenter volume here. So we'll see when I'm filling up the fermenter what we end up with, but we'll also take a gravity reading at the end of this and just see where we landed. Well guys, we've approached the end of our boil, so now we need to sanitize the chiller. One thing I didn't realize is that the chiller requires a female to female connection to chill the beer. So now I gotta figure out where I can get one pretty stat. Didn't think about that when I was doing all this, but I'm gonna go ahead and kill the heat, and we're gonna go ahead and at least sanitize the chiller while I figure out how I'm going to connect the water hose to this thing. We'll see. Here we are. I got cold water running in and running out this other hose. I had to go get this adapter for the chiller because I didn't realize that, I didn't think about it. There's two male, so I needed a female to, I needed a male to male here. So I had to get these two female pieces. And so yeah, now we got water running. Let's go ahead and get this beer chilled down and into the fermenter. And of course I got water all over the place. I got water all over the place because I had a faulty hose, not a brewing hose, but a water hose. So I had to put a different water hose on, and it fixed it back out on the wall and everything. Got kind of sprayed up and everything, and so yeah, we're still good though. So let's go ahead and get the fermenter here. Kind of nice about being able to open the doors to the brew shed is you can dump out your star sand and whatnot outside if need be. So fill her up, shall we? Okay. Put it in like that. Turn the pump on. I'm going to actually dial the flow down because this is going to really want to pour out. Kinking the hose there, keeping it from flowing. Oh, that's where it's cold. The tube feels nice and cold anyways. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put the chiller on the floor, maybe. Yeah, put the chiller on the floor. That'll help with the kink issue. Got a nice blonde color, no doubt. Just what we're looking for. But yeah, this work's coming out pretty chill. I can dial down the speed if I need to. Give it more contact time with the water. But yeah, it's coming out pretty nice and cool overall. And I'll be using the stasis to cool this down even more the rest of the way, actually. Nice honey gold color. Alright, let's see what we ended up volume-wise to ferment. We ended up with about 4.5 gallons. So didn't quite meet our volume on this one. It's about 4.5 on it. We have about that much left in the kettle, which isn't a lot, just a few ounces. But yeah, my final volume was not quite 5 gallons. Not quite. I don't know if you guys can see. Anyways, we're just about, I'd say we probably got about 4 point, I know y'all can't see that. It's under the 5 gallon mark. So we didn't hit the 5 gallon mark, so I'm just gonna top it up with a little bit of some bottled water just to get a 5 gallon volume. I did collect the sample here. Sweating because it's humid today, and you know, brew shed isn't steam free because I don't have a vent system in place yet. But yeah, it's murky because that's just what I collected out of the kettle as the proteins were kind of starting to coagulate a little bit. I'm gonna put a little sample of this on the refractometer and see what it reads. It's a 1064 gravity. Granted, I'm probably about a 1/4 gallon off. So we were supposed to get, according to this, 1063, and I got 1064. Now, I add some water, it's probably going to dial it down to like 1061. That's a fairly high gravity brew. It is definitely falls in the Imperial realm. So, even with the trials and tribulations of learning this new system, I'm not disappointed for my first time using it. I am going to go through and reset everything and run the auto tune on it again. And I've already know what my boil temp is supposed to be offset wise. So the only thing I got to do really is just get this thing to auto tune and not fluctuate as much. But I'm looking forward to doing more brews with it. And I'm sorry for some of the missed footage. The next beer will be here soon. In the next week or two I'll be doing another brew because my stasis controller will actually, it'll cool down 2 batches of beer so I can have 2 batches fermenting at the same time, so I don't have to worry about that aspect of it. So we are going to brew another batch of beer on this thing really soon, next week or two, and we'll try it again, right? But I'm not disappointed overall with my gravity, the final reading and volume and all. So we'll see if I get another 1/2 gallon or 1/4 gallon off on the next batch. So we'll see you guys next time.